Welcome back to Catapult Your Career, where we delve into the reality of various careers and explore practical advice for numerous professions. And on this episode, it's been one I've been looking forward to for a little while. And it's delved into a different industry that often isn't spoken about, and there's loads of common misconceptions, which we're trying to tackle today. But it's the world of farming or agriculture, wherever you kind of regard it as. And I've none other than a good kind of friend from school, farmer and business owner in Jack Bosworth. How are you, Jack?
I'm very good, thank you, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. And we've already joked. He's got his shirt and showing the top hair of the chest, like I remember back in the days at school. So
Always giving me a hard time about that, weren't you?
no,
That that week we had in Magaluf all those years ago, I don't think it sorted the tan out really. But
that is true. That is a blast from the past. I can tell you that. Crikey. But anyway, we're going into I suppose the topic today and kind of delving into the world of or the industry of agriculture and farming. I suppose before we kind of crack on, give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and your kind of your brief background.
yeah, so I was born into a farming family. Been farming here since 1934. We're based sort of between Chelmsford and Ongar. Growing up, it was something that I knew, from a very young age that I wanted to do. And I think that probably helped me a lot going through school because, there wasn't that distraction throughout those sort of the latter years in school where you're trying to do all your work, but at the same time thinking, well, what am I actually doing it for? I kind of had that end goal from a very young age. So yeah, throughout my life, really, during school holidays, I was always, as you know, trying to work hard and be as involved as time would allow me to, and that kind of just kept going really, and I kept working hard and eventually sort of came back into the business. I didn't take I took a bit of an interesting journey into it, I suppose. So I tried sixth form after GCSEs. Very quickly decided that actually, why am I doing that? I think I was doing that because that was the expectation. That's the classic journey that people take. So left sixth form, went out onto other farms, did various levels of practical experience across different farming businesses, some of which was paid, some of which wasn't. And then a university course came up that allowed people to get onto like a foundation degree without the A-level requirements. And again, I looked at that and thought, a lot of people who go into farming who I know of, they go to this university. Surely that's a pathway I should take next. So again, went to go and do that and very quickly decided that actually, no, this isn't right for me. This isn't working. So came away from that, went back into the family business, kind of worked my way through different roles, I suppose is the best way to describe it. So yeah, I feel very much sort of started at the bottom and tried to work my way through quite quickly. We then got to about 2017 and I just had a moment of sort of stagnation really. I felt like things weren't moving as quickly as I wanted to. I'd almost grown into the business but then couldn't take anything to a next step because I didn't have that level of control to do it. So I actually had a really good opportunity come up to go and work in Nottingham and obviously live over that way. So there was a job as part of the house, a house as part of the job, sorry. Went over there for about a year and the job was managing lots of people out in a horrible environment, out in the field, harvesting leeks by hand. So as I say, went there, did that for a year, and that taught me so many things about, what makes people tick and how to manage people. that's where I really felt things changed for me, and I became this grown up that was ready to come back again and take the business to the next step. So going to Nottingham allowed me to do that, but also allowed things to happen in the background of the family farming business. So, other partners involved were at the point where they were umming and ahhing over retirement, and me making that move away, I think made others in the business realise, right, well, there's not room for all of us, so someone's got to get out before he comes back in. And that, it all kind of clicked into place after that. And fast forward to now, we've really grown things in the business. So we've doubled the number of livestock we've got on farm. We've increased the land holding by 25%. We've got more staff, and turnover has grown massively in the business. So, and then personally, I'm engaged. So today was actually supposed to be my wedding day. I haven't cancelled it for you. Don't worry, I haven't cancelled it for you.
I'm honoured.
Yeah. So today was supposed to be my wedding day, but we were under quite a bit of pressure with everything else. So we had a little boy in March called Freddie, who's doing really well. But when he was first born, he was sort of a little bit underweight and struggling to put weight on and stuff like that. So we kind of made the decision that we were going to change the date of the wedding to give us less pressure as he sort of got through that. And that brings us nicely up to today.
Crikey, crumbs. I mean, firstly, thank you for kind of sharing your background, and firstly, massive congratulations both on the child and the engagement. And fingers crossed. I hope they look forward to the wedding preparations. Hope that goes well. When it kind of
he'll be having one of these shirts, that's for sure. The apron colour.
I'd be disappointed if you was, to be honest. When I see the picture, I'll be expecting that. But no, I mean, thank you for kind of giving us that background. And I think we'll start to come on later in the podcast around some of the common misconceptions around getting into the industry. And you've kind of highlighted some already. But I suppose a good starter for people who probably have no or little understanding of the kind of farming industry, and even if it would be a career that applies to them, a nice kind of open-ended question to start. What is a farmer? What does a farmer even encapsulate? What does it involve?
So, can I start with what the preconceived idea of a farmer is? Because I think that's I want to see if people are on the same page. But I've always thought, like when we were at secondary school and stuff like that, there was no one else really there who was in farming, and you get the classic questions of, has your dad got a combine harvester and all of this. And I suppose anyone who's watching this is probably surprised I haven't got a piece of straw hanging out my mouth or something like that. So, I think the kind of preconception of a farmer is that, it's someone who's in an old ragged check shirt, straw hanging out the mouth. There's a couple of animals in a field, and there's a bit of grain out in the other fields, and they do a bit of harvesting in the summer, chuck some seed down in the winter, and then it grows again. And with the livestock, they chuck a bucket of food out, they grow, and then you get money. That's sort of, it's on one of those sketches, isn't it? I forget the name, but that's kind of the classic idea of what a farmer is. But maybe that used to happen, I don't know. It certainly isn't the case now. So really what we do now, everything is very modern, very high tech. So we have about 7,000 pigs across 2 sites. So we have about 4,000 here and another 3,000-ish in Norfolk. And everything is on the breeding side, we have electronic ear tags in every animal, and each of those animals can have an individual feed plan, so you can feed them all different amounts. You don't have anything to do with feeding them. They walk into a station, the station picks up that animal's identity and will feed it what you've told the system to feed it. on the arable side of the business, we farm about 350 hectares, which is kind of like it's about 900 acres, which is quite a lump. I probably should have checked to see how many football pitches that's equivalent to give people an idea. But yeah, that again is all very high tech, and it's not horses going up and down with a plough anymore. It's not even a ropey old tractor going up and down with something. Everything is done with GPS, so you're not steering the machines. Everything's to like centimetre accuracy now, and it's just gone from being quite a manual, hands-on, almost dirty kind of job. Don't get me wrong, there's still tasks involved where you do have to do things like that, but the way it's gone now, it's quite high tech, and that's opened up a whole new market for people coming into the industry. So yeah, I mean that's us as a farm. There's obviously other farming businesses with different animals and different things going on, and it's every business is quite unique in this sector. A lot of people have got the same end goals in terms of obviously wanting to achieve as much for their products as possible. But yeah, we say are very different to another pig farm further down the road. It's just how people have invested over time and what changes they've really wanted to jump into. So
Yeah, no, definitely, and thanks for like kind of painting that picture. And I think I've met a few people, like you say, farming industry, and again, we're perhaps come onto it. It can be perceived as quite insular, so quite inward looking. So occasionally when you meet a farmer, for me, I'm just an incredibly curious and inquisitive person, hence the podcast, really. So I just asked a load of questions, but you can even tell. So I met a farmer on a piece of volunteering I did in the summer. And they almost shared it. Like you could tell they were wary of the misconception I might have about them. They were like, "Yes, I'm a farmer," and I was like, "No, don't worry, I'm not." Like, I think it's bloody interesting. But what they had done, they diversified, like you said, the different industries, different specialists. They diversified almost at least 50% of their business into kind of crops, but also I think it was feed as part of governmental schemes in terms of feed and stuff like that. Based on troubles with soil and stuff like that. So it really is a massive industry, and there's so many different specialisms inside it. And like you said, I think what you've done is start to paint a picture of it's not just man with straw hat doing one thing. There's so many different avenues, and I don't know if that brings any reflections for you when I start to paint that.
yeah, it's also really interesting that you mentioned, speaking to that other farmer, and he kind of shot down this perception like I feel I probably just did. But we don't blame, or I certainly don't blame anyone for not understanding it, because why would you?
Yeah,
Going through school, it was never on the curriculum. We never learnt about that side of things, and that's why I think we've got such a labour shortage in this industry. People aren't aware of farming, let alone what actually goes on in it.
yeah,
And that's no one's fault. That
yeah.
it just hasn't been covered. So why are people going to know about it? As
It's
time
true.
goes on, I think it probably will come in at some point, and the importance of where our food comes from is growing. And I think probably that's been since COVID. People want to know about their food and how it's produced and where it's produced, and that's what makes it exciting. And I think people will want to jump on that at some point. I just hope it's soon.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's true, and I mean, if we continue down the track of like common misconceptions, I suppose around farming, I suppose there's a couple of bits to tackle here. But I think the first obvious question for me, and even when you were talking about your background, it really like popped up for me. Obviously, you were born into a farming family, and I mean, who knows? I suppose this is a bit of a theoretical question here, but do you think you had to become a farmer, if that makes sense? Did you have the choice per se, or was it almost this is what you're going to do?
You know what? I definitely had the choice, because actually, at times, I think we can all be too emotionally invested in stuff. Yeah, and at times, I maybe felt like I was trying to impress, and actually my family would try and go the other way. and push you away from it. They were that against trying to force people into doing something they didn't want to do. And that worked well for me, because I do think, yes, I've ended up going back into the business, but if I had have just wanted to please all the time, and they had just wanted to, keep getting me into the business as soon as possible, I wouldn't have gone away to Nottingham. I wouldn't have got that valuable experience. I probably would have stayed at university, because I guess, if my family had have said, oh, well, the business can pay for you to go to university and then you can come back to the farm. But, I never wanted to really, milk all that side of things from the business. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I kind of wanted to make my own way there. And I think that's the other sort of misconception, really, is that people will maybe listen to this and think it's a family farming business. He's basically been handed a silver spoon and he's come back. And it definitely isn't like that at all. Everything I've achieved so far, I've had to work really bloody hard for, and I will keep working bloody hard until I stop. That's just in my nature, and I don't want anything for free, because I don't need anything for free. I will just keep working hard, and that's how I'll get there with everything.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, as a slight tangent, and I suppose I would kind of say this in terms of being a coach, there's a key bit for me there, though, of having that kind of self-awareness of, like, we always talk, are we pushed or are we pulled? And, you even hear this, for those who might know Eddie Hearn, who obviously was the son of Barry Hearn, so the kind of boxing, and he was very much well known for his snooker and stuff like that. But he always talks about, being born with a silver spoon, and how kind of Barry Hearn made sure his upbringing was very kind of hard on him to make sure he valued everything that he had. And, how hard he works really hard, but part of the reason he works so hard is to do better than his father, to show, yes, he might have been born with a good situation, but because of his hard work ethic and his skills, he kind of took it to another level. And there's a bit with me, which is interesting. When you kind of talk, I'm thinking, like, work bloody hard. I'm going to do this on my own back. I don't need anything for free, But do you ever kind of consider, like, are you being pulled through that, like, insecurity, or are you being pushed? It's
I hope I'm not going to lead us too far off track, but it's one of those where actually there's times, don't get me wrong, there's times where you come home and you think, why am I doing all of this? I'm basically working hard for everyone else. It's not me that pockets the money and everything else. And but it is me that's on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because if there's a problem, I'm closest and I'm the one that's got to sort it out. So there's times where you come home and you think, well, why don't I just go and manage a farm for someone else? I know I could go and manage a farm for someone else, and that's not to sound big-headed, but I know I could do that, and I could earn more money in doing that. But there's something brilliant about trying to build something, and I've been lucky enough that obviously I've been able to take something on that was well established and pretty secure. We're now taking that to a slightly different level, in that the business is borrowing a hell of a lot more money than it ever did and everything else. So we're taking more risks. But yeah, it's just something great about, particularly now that I've got a son, it already changes your concept that, you're not just here for you, you're here for the next generation and the generation after that. And if I can take this business to another level and another level after that, and whether my son wants to go into it or not, at least he's going to be well equipped to decide, okay, well, if I don't want to do that, I might be able to take some resource from that and put that into what I do want to do. So yeah, that's what has stopped me going, right, I'm gonna jump away from this and go and manage someone else's business. It's all about that kind of period of succession, really.
And that actually, I'm not just saying it, that is beautiful, because I think you hear that a lot in terms of, like, the new life kind of changing your perception on things, and truly realizing there's more to life than just me. And what you're speaking to from an outsider feels like a legacy, a wider legacy that's beyond just you. It's your name, it's your family heritage and stuff, which is, I think, it's amazing.
And
And
it is. Sorry, I'm just
well,
going to say it is quite funny because obviously I've said to you, growing up, it was clear that farming was what I was going to do. You
yeah,
know, but going to Nottingham and managing all those people, I've just unlocked this whole new passion for managing people. Managing people is as valuable to me, if not more, as what goes on out on the farm now. That's what makes me tick. I like
yeah,
knowing, how to get the best out of people and seeing it come to fruition. And
yeah,
that's why I just think I think we have become a really good place to work within the industry now, because we are taking people into this business who have never been involved either, directly with arable or pigs that we do, or just haven't been involved in agriculture as a whole, and feel like, we're taking them on that journey, and they're reaping the rewards of it, and so are we. And
yeah,
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 that's great to see. To me, that means as much as if we have a record profit. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I think that I think it actually was Stephen Bartlett who we both kind of shared interest in listening to his podcast. But I think he said, first and foremost, every company should see themselves as a recruitment company, and
Mm.
regardless of what industry, whatever they do, first and foremost, you're recruiting the best talent, and you're giving them the best possible facilities and settings to allow them to prosper and to empower them. And I think what you speak to is very much similar to that, in terms of, doesn't matter where they come from in terms of a background. We kind of recruit the best people, the best values. You got hard work ethic. They're in line with what we want to achieve, but we give them the best opportunities, the best grounding, so that they can actually thrive in terms of our business. And then, regardless of what industry you're in, you're going to be onto a winner. And I think, just to kind of round off the kind of misconceptions, the final one I thought I would ask, there's been a lot of mention of work and drive, and I suppose one of the misconceptions or conceptions perhaps that I would say have from farming is it's tough, it's hard, long hours, and it's hard work. How do you, I suppose, navigate holidays per se? Can you even have a holiday abroad because you're wary of things happening, in the UK and stuff like that? How does that work, I suppose?
Yes, so it's a good question. For my staff, whenever they request holiday, they always get it. So,
Yeah,
say someone who works on the pig side of the business, obviously that's all year round. We're producing pigs, we're having pigs born every single week of the year. Um, but obviously, for the business as a whole, our kind of peak time is around the cereal harvest, because the pigs are still as ongoing as they are the rest of the year. But on the arable side, that's when the serious hours come in. To obviously, if the weather's against us, you're working to get harvesting as quickly as possible, as well as possible, sort of thing. So July, August, September are challenging challenging times to get people to do such long hours, and someone on the pigs always takes time off in August every year. And I could see that a lot of people would be like, well, no, we can't do that because we're busy in another area of the business. But that's not that person's fault. They're working in their sector of it. So we're not gonna change what we do for them, sort of thing. And yeah, so they get their time off whenever they request it, whether that's in the middle of harvest or not. For me personally, I'm taking my first holiday abroad in about 3 years in November.
hmm
um, I do get away for kind of odd weekends and stuff like that. My fiance will say otherwise. But I I struggle to switch off. I'll be honest with you. I really struggle to switch off, and I think probably the only way I will switch off is by getting out of the country for a week.
yeah,
So I had, I suppose, what I would call a day off on Thursday, which was to go to London for a meeting about farming. But because I wasn't on the farm, it was almost a day off, and by like 7:30 in the morning, I'd already had two messages. So, I'm not obviously selling that side of it very well. But the reality is, if you're if it's kind of your thing or your overall responsibility, then
Yeah.
I guess you're always going to take less time off. You're always going to be switched on for longer than everyone else.
Yeah. I
So
I think it's fair, to be fair. Like, I think there's two things I would say. I think we have an obsession with work-life balance in the current kind of society, and I think that's good and bad, because I think work-life balance is specific to you. Now, work-life balance doesn't just mean like 9-day fortnights, flexible working, and stuff like that. That's one aspect. But if you're inherently in a job that gives you energy and you enjoy it, and it's almost your hobby, why should we demonize and look down on that person and say, "Oh, you haven't got good work-life balance"? It's nothing to do with you. You know, if that's enjoying you and that's giving you energy and that gives you, you know, what you need, then great. You have got work-life balance. It's not just sort of occasionally of just we're very structured in our thinking around this. And I think, you know, obviously we have to kind of bear in mind as well, like you kind of touched on, you are ultimately the business owner. So you are kind of the peak of the feed chain, I suppose. So you will have greater responsibilities. And at the end of the day, it lies on your door whether things go good or bad or indifferent. So there will always be a various degree of kind of responsibility on the roles, as opposed to, like you said, the person with the pig farming who still has their leave in peak harvest, as opposed to you and others. So you know, it's nothing to do with selling it. I think this is the key for me, just to get across the reality of the role,
yeah,
and
uh,
I think that's fair.
yeah, definitely. And like from listening to some of your previous episodes, you obviously uh, sort of tend to try and get people to question their decisions, don't you? And which is great, you know. And I always think of one to myself, which is, what would I do if I won the lottery?
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
what I'd do if I won the lottery is exactly what I'm doing now. And that's,
exactly.
as you say, that work-life balance. I love coming into work. You know, I absolutely love work. Um, it's not just a job for me. It's so much
Yeah,
more than that. And that, you know, when I say about, yes, I could go somewhere else, I could go into another industry even, I think I'm capable of doing that and earning a lot more money in the here and now. But that doesn't, I don't think that would get me up in the morning. You know,
yeah,
what gets me up in the morning is this thought of growing something really great. Like I say, seeing people progress from one level to the next. That's what, you know, is sort of making it all worthwhile for me.
amen. Yeah, and I would say I'm completely aligned with you. So in terms of building my coaching practice, I think to see the journeys that you take people on, like there's nothing better. And
Mm,
I did exactly the same question as you said. So I said, if I won the lottery, what would I do? And it would be coaching people.
yeah.
And like this podcast and the coaching practice, you know, touch wood, I hope to do it when I'm 80. Like I love talking to people and have interesting conversations and kind of broadening my horizons. Like I would do that till I'm 80, 90, and coaching people. I would do it even if it's half a day a week, whatever I can physically capably do. I would still be doing that. And that is the reason why I'm kind of turning my efforts to this, because this is what I want to do to the rest of my days, really. So, yeah, I think it's a really good point, and thank you for kind of illustrating it, because I think work-life balance is specific to you. Don't be brought into narratives, you know, oh, this is what I should do. I think it's important to think about what you want to do personally. And I suppose kind of pivoting slightly to now to think about, I suppose, the role and the responsibilities, and get into a bit of the detail. I suppose what would you say the average week looks like for you, or perhaps people who work at your kind of organisation?
Yeah, so some of the roles here are obviously very routine. So, you know, first and foremost, animals need feeding, um, crops need inspecting and treating and stuff like that. So there's obviously lots of routine tasks that have to go on because that's the nature of the business. You know, crops are at different growth stages at different times of the year. Pigs are always ongoing here, so you know there's a routine of, you know, when they're going to give birth, when they're being served, when we're pregnancy scanning, all of that side of things. For me, my average week is very much trying to work with the variables. So in farming, the big one's obviously the weather. Um, so I don't know exactly what's going to be happening next week because the forecast could change. So
Yeah.
you almost have two plans for everything, you know, because it's like, right, well, if it's dry, I know next week we're going to be drilling some crops. If it's wet, then we're going to have to start looking at sort of servicing some machinery for over winter and having things ready to go when it needs to go again.
Hmm.
Um, so that's kind of the challenging part. And really my role is is almost like being the glue, just trying to piece everything together and make it stick one way or another.
Mm.
And so pretty much for me, it's about giving people the tools they need to do their jobs. But it's very hard to answer an average week in farming, because in July and August, obviously, I'm on a machine sort of
Yeah.
15 hours a day, whereas this time of year, I'm actually having a morning off to talk to you, sort of thing, and that's rare. But and then I'm putting a bill in. That's all right. No, but it's very different because it's so seasonal. There's peak times with the arable, whereas the pigs, like I say, is very routine for the guys that are involved in that.
Yeah, and I think like you said, there is no such thing as an average week. But even again, for people who listen, I suppose, who are, this is starting to open their eyes to whether this is an industry they would like to kind of get into. You even mentioned some of the feeding roles compared to your roles and other stuff. Some roles perhaps might be more routine, so you might kind of come in knowing roughly what you're doing. You're going to do probably one of these 4 tasks at a fairly kind of periodic basis. And that might be perfect for someone. So someone might want to come in with no kind of frills or spills and kind of know this is roughly what I'm going to be doing. This is roughly the times of year, depending on weather, etc. I'm going to do in it. And that might suit them more. Perhaps there's other roles that might be more thinking on your feet and a lot more kind of variety and kind of almost crisis management to a low level, which might apply to other people. So I think for me, again, it's just reinforcing, it's not just one role and just one job in farming. There's various roles that can apply to various different people in terms of what they enjoy,
Yeah, I mean, it is exactly that. I mean, a lot of my role is liaising with specialist advisors that we have for all different areas of the business. So, it's not just me and then the others that are on the farm. We have, an agronomist who's away from the farm who advises us on crop health. We have a soil nutritionist who advises us on how we can, make our soils more sustainable and improve the long-term health that will improve crop yields. We have a vet for animal health and welfare. We have accountants, tax advisors. There's just literally something for everyone in this industry. It's there literally is something for everyone. If you like a routine, if you don't like a routine. So a lot of the people here on the farm, like I say, on the pig side, that is very routine, and that works really well for people that like that structure. For me, I couldn't do that role within the business. I hate routine. If I try and set a routine, I might do it for a couple of weeks, and then something always comes up, and it's whether it's not necessarily that I let it stop the routine, but it's just what works for me. And I love being sort of here, there, and everywhere, and almost quite like the challenge of trying to solve a problem. Whereas other people really like their routine, and if something takes them off track of that, then they have a nightmare trying to actually get through that day, knowing that the routine's being thrown out, sort of thing. So again, that's where it comes into people management, knowing that works for some people here. So you have to do everything you can to keep their routine as it is, and as soon as it goes off track, you're almost looking at yourself saying, well, I need to make sure that doesn't happen again, for their benefit, sort of thing. So I probably haven't answered your question very well at all, but that
No, you have, and I think it's just constantly shedding a bit of light on what the reality is of these careers, because I always say this: there's a bit like lawyer, a bit like farming, a bit like teaching, whatever it is. There'll be people in different backgrounds that one might not have even heard of them as a career, and it's very hard to do or aspire to do something that you can't see or that you don't know about. And there are then careers that you do know about, but you think you can't get into them, e.g. farming. And I think it's just like constantly shared in the light of I always say this is the podcast I wish I had when I was like 15, 16. And I was thinking, right, I have to be an accountant or this or that or management consultant, and that's it, basically. I had no idea how many different fields and careers were out there for me. And if I knew that, I reckon, I have no regrets, and I don't even really believe in regrets. I think everything helped shape us to be the
Yeah.
person we are today. But what I would have done is probably taken a few different decisions in life. I might have done a few different things, a few different jobs. And if I can share that and help just even one person have a better understanding and go into a different career that ultimately, like me and you have said, they're doing something that makes them happy regardless of the financial kind of implement. And of course, don't get me wrong, you need to earn a pound note to kind of, sustain your life. I think that would be massive. That is the legacy I'm trying to kind of live against, I suppose. So it's definitely covered that. And I suppose
I,
going more. Oh, sorry, go on, Jack. Go on. Is there
no,
something you can share?
yeah, I was just going to say that I do think like people shouldn't be afraid to try something new. And
Mm.
I go back to sixth form and university, which I obviously tried and gave up very quickly on both of those occasions. And at the time, you're almost thinking, oh well, I've started it now. I've kind of got to see it through because that's what people would want, or
Yeah,
I can't deal with the flack if I come away from it, sort of thing.
yeah,
And I did from some particular people, I did get a bit of a hard time when making that change, making that decision to step away from that path. But looking back, it was exactly the right decision for me, and no one else would know that that was the right or the wrong decision at the time. So
mm,
you just, I don't know, it's really easy to say it, but you just need to be afraid not to, to not be afraid to do something, because
yeah.
you never know what it can lead to.
100%. And I think that the two quick things I'd say on that is that the whole kind of sunk cost fallacy. So now I'm here, I've spent the money, I've spent the time, I have to do it. I think that shows a real like high degree of self awareness and kind of like understanding from you to like quit things quickly. And it's like, oh, you failed and you haven't done it. No, actually, you know what you want to do, and you've, regardless of what people thought about you, you've still made a decision regardless. And I think that's like really, really kind of high level. Um, and I forgot the second bit.
I think that is a really good point, and it's one of those that, like, if you're too afraid of failure, you won't succeed.
That's
You
it.
know that
Yeah.
that is the reality of it. If you're so worried about what other people are thinking or what's going to go wrong, then you'll never achieve what's going to be right.
No,
So
and thank you for saying that, because you just reminded me. The second bit for me is I always try to embrace kind of discomfort. So when I know, so I now use this as my bearing. So when I'm like, oh, I'm not sure about that, and I get that little feeling in your belly, and you're thinking, oh, is it pushing me a bit? I'm like, I have to do it. So
yeah,
as soon as I feel that discomfort, I'm like, I have to do this now. And I still regard myself as an introvert. I like time by myself, and I like to recharge my batteries alone. But most people will see me in my coaching space or delivering workshops or kind of being the centre of attention because of the nature of my role, and they wouldn't consider that at all. And my kind of public speaking and communication has gone from strength to strength because I've embraced that discomfort, and I've gone, oh, that someone wants you to talk around the board and deliver a presentation. I think, oh Christ, no, I couldn't think of anything worse. And then my brain would tick like 5 seconds later and be like, yeah, you have to do this now because this makes
yeah.
you discomfort. You
And
now have to do this.
how did you make that initial step? Like, how did you have the guts to do that? Because I think
Yeah.
that's brilliant, being able to obviously put yourself out of your comfort zone. But
Yeah.
the reality is, it sort of looms closer and closer, and people want to step away from it. And
Yeah.
it's probably something I do a little bit as well. I'm a little bit, sometimes, you just think, right, I'm going to just step away from that. I've committed to do something, but I'm not sure about it now. And you almost, step back from that. And you can easily, particularly in this job, you can easily find another excuse. Oh, something's come up, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Um,
I,
and like,
I think it's twofold. I think it's a really good question, firstly. So thank you for asking it, because I reckon a lot of people will be thinking the same. So there's twofold. There's exposure therapy, and there's looking at the past. So the kind of the exposure therapy, let's say, is simply like, so if you're scared of spiders, so my partner, my wife, is scared of spiders, hates them, right? And every time there be a spider, I'm the one who has to kind of pick them up with
yeah,
glass or whatever, and she can get rid of them. So like, there's various levels to kind of getting it. So it can go from the simplest level of seeing a picture of a spider, and that might trigger you and set you off, Then it might be in the same room as the spider and then watching me get rid of the kind of spider. Then it might be, I don't know, they give me the glass, they put the glass on the spider, but then I take the spider out myself, and then eventually they do it. So that's just, you're slowly building at the lowest level in terms of exposure therapy. Like a common one is like communication. So if you have to do communications in front of groups of strangers, you might start with doing a recording on your phone. So you just record yourself, and that will be cringy and that will give you a bit of discomfort. You might then share a recording to a close friend, a best friend. So you know there's you're not, you still have those judgments in your mind about what they're going to think about me. And then from there, you might do it to one stranger, and then eventually you might transition to in person. So it's building it up in slow elements, rather than saying, right, I'm going to go Toastmasters in front of 1,000 people and start doing a speech. So that's the big thing I incorporated with all the bits of discomfort I had. And then the second big thing is past experiences. So we're so like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? Especially me. I'm the worst for it. I'm always like, what's next? But if I look back, even in the last year, 5 years, 10 years, of all the things I've done and how far I've grown, even if I think about the Duke of Edinburgh. So I did the Gold Duke of Edinburgh, canoe in Loch Ness, and I think it was Loch Lochy, wild camping, like half the time, a good friend of mine, the sports writer Joe, who was previously kind of on the podcast, he was cutting a bottle in half and kind of chucking water out whilst we're in the middle of Loch Ness. And I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing? And if I look back to that situation, how much resilience and how much that kind of built me up as a person, it's massive. And I think we're so quick to kind of forget about all the little kind of accomplishments that we've done in the past, that a mix of that exposure therapy and a mix of all the things. And another good friend, a chap called Robin Waite, who does business coaching, I believe he calls them like truth statements. So writing down what is true. So I do run a coaching practice. I have transitioned my career. I'm married to my kind of soulmate. I have gone in the Gold Duke. These are all true. These are, whatever happens to me, these things I've done. And I think a mix of those two things really builds you up. It's not like, looking in the mirror and shouting kind of stuff at yourself and saying you're amazing. And I don't get me wrong, there's a place for that. But it's real practical things that have actually helped me. And that's the big thing I always think with coaching. Sometimes people think it's a bit woo-woo. But for me, coming from the reality and the situations I'm in, that's where coaching really brings to the fore. And I have some real practical insights to actually help people on that journey. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a understanding, I suppose.
Yeah.
Amazing. So the kind of to transition a little bit, you've mentioned your average week. We've done some misconceptions. I suppose first and foremost, what are some of the skills and education requirements per se? So if we're looking for people now, they like the sound of it. There's various roles I could get into. Actually, you've debusted some myths, so it's a much more appealing industry. As a business owner, I suppose yourself, like, what are some of the skills, educational requirements people can start to look at or utilise to start to pivot it into this industry?
Yeah, so it all depends on, where you're going to work within the industry. There's so many jobs out there, obviously overall, but also within agriculture, where basically if you haven't got a degree, don't apply, and which was another reason for kind of this trying of university, because again, you almost get sort of so sucked in by that you feel like, well, if I don't have that piece of paper, that rules me out of, I don't know, however many percent of the jobs that are available. Don't get me wrong, that is in agriculture, so there will be some jobs where they say that is a requirement. Certainly in this business, we don't require that. I've got some people that do have a degree, I've got some people that don't. Whether they had that on their CV or not, I don't know if this is going to be nice for people that do have a degree to hear, but I wouldn't, it wouldn't change my mindset about that person one bit.
Mm-hmm.
For this business, the key requirements are a willingness to learn, patience, because there's other people on the site, there's animals on the site, a calmness, an ability to deal with things under pressure. And other than that, we can work with everything else.
Yeah.
I always think the more detailed a job description is in terms of requirements, what people are looking for on an advert, the less people want to invest in that person.
Mm.
If they're looking for the complete person, that's great, but are we ever really at that point? and
Yeah.
for us, it's about investing in the people. If we can get the right characters here, then we feel like everything else will piece together, sort of thing, and that can be worth a lot more than someone who thinks they do know it all. Again, we've had both. We've had both here. We've had some people who will come in and say, "Look, I know nothing about this, but I like the sound of the advert," and that's great. And then we've had other people that will say, "Yeah, I've done that. I've done that. I've done that. If you've been to Tenerife, I've been to 11erife, that kind of
Yeah.
thing." Uh, and again, that's worked at times, but other times it hasn't. So yeah, the requirements really are those core skills that I don't think you can train someone to be patient. I don't think you can train someone to be calm.
Mm.
I might be wrong, and you might disagree with that, but I think you can develop, and improve it slightly. But I think if you don't have a bit of that about you, that's not something that us as a business could really get on board with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Other than that, yeah, then we're willing. There's so many training courses out there, and opportunities for us to invest in people that we feel like, yeah, whatever their sort of skill set in terms of qualifications and past experience, we can cope with that and
Yeah. Yeah.
do
No,
what needs doing.
I love that. And for me, again, what I'm hearing is, I mean, first and foremost, it sounds like you're creating something really special. I would say, and with what you're saying, but for me, it screams like a values based business. And I've mentioned this slightly with Katie or Kate, who's runs a marketing agency. But I think it's really powerful, like your core components of that person, their core values. Um, and a lot of stuff can be upskilled and trained, but the person itself, it takes a whole lot of self awareness and some real deep transformation to kind of make those changes. But if someone ultimately has values that align with you and is willing to work and is open to learning, and even if they have got qualifications, doesn't think they're perfect and they know it all, that is worth a hell of a lot more than someone who's like done all the qualifications and thinks they're an expert and hasn't got anything else to learn.
Yeah.
So I think what you say is amazing, really, for the person.
We know that we've had to adapt to become like that.
Mm,
There was a need to do that. So we've mentioned that obviously we need more people in the industry. It is a struggle getting people in, and you are now having to sell yourself to candidates.
yeah,
I know you had another podcast where you were talking about actually what is a job interview, weren't you? With this
yeah,
back and forth, rather than you're interviewing me, you ask me a question, I answer, and then I wait for you to ask me another one.
yeah,
And this you mentioned culture. That's exactly what
yeah.
we have been working on, and that is absolutely key in any industry now. Whereas I
Mm,
think if even now you would ask some farmers, what do you think I mean by the word culture? And they wouldn't know where on earth to start. They probably just thought that you'd misspelt cultivate or something like that. So there's still a long way to go for a lot of people in this industry, but we've had to make that step to make ourselves more appealing to get people in. And I think if we're one of the first to do that, and we can master that as best we can whilst keep developing it further, then that's going to make us a better place to work than some others.
Definitely, definitely. And I suppose as we kind of start to pull up the kind of the podcast to a close, I think you've had such a varied and kind of extensive background in terms of the industry, and what you've shared today. And the question, as you've listened to a few episodes, you'll probably know what's coming. But like, if you were to enter the industry again as that fresh faced Jack a few years ago, what would be your advice in terms of for yourself, that younger Jack, if you were entering the industry again?
um I think probably just improving like my awareness of my emotions, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's times where you've almost made decisions because you think that's what you should be doing, or you want to please other people or whatever, and then
Hmm.
you step into that, and it it's not working for you. You know,
Yeah.
like I say, it's not making you tick. It's not making you want to get up in the morning. And I think if I should have, just been more aware that it's about me, you know, in the nicest possible way. My decisions are
Yeah.
about me. Obviously, they have an effect on other people, but if I can't make myself happy with that decision, then does anything else sort of matter? That might
Yeah.
sound a bit selfish, but
Yeah.
I
I
just think
love it.
too many people are trying to go with the flow in life, you know. And if I could just imagine a group of friends, you know, and someone in that group says, "I want to be a farmer," and the other people in that group would say, "Well, why on earth do you want to do that?" You know, based on this preconceived idea, and that would rule it out. They'd never explore it again. And I just
Mhm.
think that's sad that it can get like that. And I go back to, you know, earlier in my life, and there's times that I've tried to please too many other people and forgotten about, you know, the here and now and the me in it. So that's probably what I'd say to people. Just be a bit more aware of your emotions, you know,
Yeah.
with how you're feeling. It's so easy just to try and please others all the time, but don't hesitate to be a little bit more selfish.
Amen. I absolutely love that. And again, you know, there's a common theme here. All the pieces of advice are never industry specific. They're always things that apply to anybody from any industry, any role. And I think on that word of being selfish, you know, we see the word selfish as a negative thing. It absolutely doesn't have to be. I
Yeah,
mean, if you're selfish to yourself to make yourself happy and to ultimately have a wider impact and to make your family happy and to do, there's no negativity involved in that, in my understanding at all. And if you can't do something for you, and then you know, who are you doing it for? You know,
yeah,
are you always going to be living someone else's life? So, you know, thank you so much for kind of sharing that, because I think it's truly powerful, and I think anybody, regardless of their age, regardless of their experience, you know, emotional intelligence is something I commonly talk about, and it's something we cover a lot in coaching. So I think it's really important that people kind of grow that understanding. Um, and I suppose before we kind of pull this to a close, is there anything, you know, we've spoke about a raft of different topics about misconceptions, aspects of the role, what some of the skills and common educational requirements perhaps may be to enter this industry. Is there anything we haven't covered that you think we should discuss before we close?
I would just say that, you know, for those people who are listening that don't really know what they want to do yet, or have listened to some of this and thought, well, he's blabbed on about quite a lot, but I still don't really know any more about it. Get in touch with me, because I will always try and help people who want to get in, you know, whether that's young or old. We need good people in this industry, and if you want to do well in farming, you will.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a lot of earning potential. There's so much opportunity. There's obviously a lot of development in terms of the science, you know, and how things are changing. Basically, as a nation, we've got to try and produce more food from less resource, and you know, there's a hell of an opportunity for people to be a part of that. So it's easy for me to say, oh, we need to get more young people in, and then kind of turn this podcast off and not do anything. So anyone who's listening who's interested in being involved, you know, young or old, then feel free to reach out to me, and I'll happily either put you in touch with, you know, kind of a bigger organisation within agriculture who can help get you started, or if you're wanting to just learn more, then I'll try and pick it up and answer it as terribly as I've probably answered most of these questions.
I mean, I can hear a bit of self doubt creeping in.
Yeah, well, yeah,
I'm gonna switch my coach brain off, but
yeah,
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 absolutely, and thank you so much for that offer. And for everyone listening, I'll be sure to include in the show notes various ways to contact Jack if you want to reach out, and please do. I always encourage people to do so for in every episode of the podcast. So. I suppose thank you so much for your time, Jack. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been great to catch up and to kind of hear a real deep dive into the farming industry.
yeah. Thanks for having me, and good luck.
Cheers. Thank you. And thanks to all those who listen again on this episode of Catapult Your Career. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one.